The stars were silent, endless, and cold. Vera sat inside her broken escape pod, the flickering lights painting her silver skin in shades of blue. The air was thin, her breath slow and shallow. Her baby sleeping weakly beside her, wrapped in torn fabric. She pressed a trembling hand against the cracked glass of the viewport, watching the last light of her home planet fade into darkness. Her ship had been destroyed 3 days ago, hunted by Dominion war drones that wanted every Orenthal dead. Her people once lived with pride and power, but now they were hunted like ghosts. She whispered to herself, "Please, someone, anyone." But the radio answered only with static. The last of her fuel was gone, the life support was dying, and her baby's small chest rose slower with each passing minute. Vera had sent hundreds of signals, each coded with distress, each unanswered. Her hope was almost gone, buried under the endless night. The stars looked beautiful, but they were cruel. They had seen 1,000 cries for mercy, yet they never spoke back. She stared at her child, her voice breaking. "I cannot let you fade," she said softly, her eyes full of tears. Her species' pride meant nothing now. Only her baby mattered. She took the last metal coin she had, engraved with her family mark, and placed it near the child's hand, whispering a prayer to the stars. Then, with weak fingers, she adjusted the long-range transmitter one last time. Her voice, though faint, carried across the void. "This is Vera of the Orenthal colony," she said. "My ship is lost. My child is dying. Please, if any soul can hear me, help us." The signal went out, crossing 1,000 light years, reaching empty space where no one should be listening. She leaned back, closing her eyes, her heartbeat slow. Maybe the stars were never meant to answer. Maybe mercy was only a dream. Then suddenly, a faint sound came from the radio. At first, she thought it was an illusion, another trick of the dying transmitter. But then a voice broke through the static, deep, calm, and human. "This is Commander Elias Grant of the human vessel Odyssey. Identify yourself." Vera froze, her hands shaking. Human, she thought. The humans were far beyond this region of space, explorers, soldiers, sometimes saviors, but never here. Her voice cracked as she replied, "Please, my child, and I beg you." There was a pause, then the human voice again. Softer now. "Hang on, we're locking onto your signal." For the first time in days, Vera felt something she had forgotten. Hope. But fear followed right after. Humans had fought in the Dominion Wars. Many hated her kind. Would they help her? Or finish what the drones started? Her heart beat faster, the sound filling the small pod like thunder. Her eyes went to the window again, where distant stars shimmered. Then among them, a new light appeared, a small, glowing spark growing brighter by the second. The ship emerged from hyperspace, massive, metallic, and alive with energy. The human vessel Odyssey moved with precision, a predator among the void. Its light swept across the broken pod. Scanning every fragment, Vera held her child close, whispering, "Stay with me, little one, just a little longer." Inside the human ship, Commander Elias Grant stared at the sensor display, his crew confused. "Sir, it's an Orenthal escape pod," his officer said. "Should we report it to command?" Elias frowned, remembering the orders. No contact with alien survivors, no exceptions. But he could hear the weak female voice echoing through the comms. And it didn't sound like a soldier. It sounded like a mother. He took a deep breath, then gave the order, "Prepare the rescue bay." Outside, Vera saw the massive shadow moving closer. The human ship's docking lights locked onto her pod, pulling it gently into safety. Her eyes filled with tears as the docking clamps latched. Her last thought before darkness took her was a whisper. The stars finally answered. The pod systems powered down completely. Her hand slipped from the controls, her baby still in her arms. The human crew rushed to open the hatch, and as the airlock hissed open, Commander Elias Grant stepped inside, seeing her for the first time. A fragile alien mother who had begged the stars for mercy and found it in humanity. Cold air rushed into Vera's lungs as the pod door opened. Her vision was blurry, but she saw tall figures in dark suits standing under bright white lights. The air smelled strange, clean yet sharp. A human voice spoke, calm but commanding. "She's alive, get her to medbay." Strong arms lifted her gently, and she felt the warmth of breathable air. Her baby let out a faint cry, and one of the humans turned with surprise. "Sir, there's an infant," the medic said softly. Commander Elias Grant nodded, his eyes serious. Then move fast. Hours later, Vera opened her eyes again. Lying on a soft medical bed, machines hummed around her, glowing with colors she had never seen. Her baby rested beside her, breathing peacefully under a dome of filtered oxygen. When she turned her head, she saw the human who had saved her. Standing quietly near the door, he looked strong but tired, his face marked by the wear of a long journey. There was something strange in his eyes. Not just curiosity, but compassion. Vera tried to speak, but her throat burned. Elias stepped forward and handed her a cup of water. Easy, he said, his voice low and calm. You're safe now, safe, she thought. The word felt almost foreign. She drank slowly, her hands trembling. Why did you help me? She asked softly. Elias looked at her for a moment before answering. Because someone had to. She watched him carefully. Trying to understand, humans were known for their logic, their drive to survive. Not for risking their lives for others, yet here he was, saving a stranger from a race once called enemy. What is your name? She whispered. Commander Elias Grant. Captain of the Odyssey, he said, his tone steady. And you are, Vera, she replied. Of the Orenthal colony. The name made some of the humans in the room exchange glances. The Orenthal were accused of starting the war that cost millions of human lives. But Elias didn't flinch. He only said, Then today. The war ends here. The silence that followed was heavy. Outside the medbay window, stars drifted slowly past as the ship glided through deep space. Vera closed her eyes again, exhaustion pulling her under. Elias stayed for a long time, watching her breathe, his mind full of questions. Later in the command room, his crew argued. Sir, we can't take her back to human space, Lieutenant Rourke said. Command will see this as treason. Elias crossed his arms, his gaze cold and sharp. We'll report when I decide. Not before, he replied. She's carrying something. Another officer said quietly. A hidden device, maybe data. Elias turned to the scanner display, where faint energy spikes pulsed from the alien pod now stored in the cargo bay. Bring it up on screen, he ordered. The image showed a small crystal buried deep in the pod's control board, glowing faintly blue. Sir, that's not standard Orenthal tech, the engineer said. It's Dominion code. Everyone froze. If that crystal truly came from the Dominion, it could mean one thing. Vera was carrying a secret worth killing for. Elias rubbed his chin, thinking. He didn't believe she was a spy. She didn't have the eyes of one, but the universe had a cruel way of testing mercy. He decided to keep the secret quiet for now. Seal the pod. Nobody touches that crystal, he said firmly. We'll figure this out before command does. Back in the med bay, Vera woke again, feeling the ship move faster. She sensed the tension, the human crew watching her like she was dangerous. Her baby stirred, small fingers reaching out, and she smiled weakly. Whatever happened next, she would protect her child even if it meant running again. Elias entered the room once more, carrying a tray of food. You need strength, he said. Placing it beside her, she looked at him, puzzled. Do humans always feed their enemies? She asked. He smiled faintly. Only the ones worth saving. Her eyes softened, and for the first time in a long while, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, kindness still existed among the stars. But far away in the black distance, Dominion scanners flickered to life, locking onto the same signal that had reached the Odyssey. The hunters had found their trail, and they were coming. The Odyssey drifted in silence, far from any star system, its engines humming like a heartbeat in the dark. Commander Elias Grant stood before the sealed pod in the cargo bay, the faint blue glow of the hidden crystal casting long shadows on the walls. He knew this wasn't just a rescue anymore. Something inside that pod was pulling danger toward them, something powerful. He reached out, touching the glass cover, his reflection mixing with the soft alien light. What are you hiding, Vera? He whispered. Behind him, the engineer, Rourke, cleared his throat. Sir, if that thing sends a signal, the Dominion will find us, Elias nodded slowly. Then we make sure they don't. Meanwhile, Vera sat in the medbay holding her baby close, the hum of the ship now familiar. She had been watching the humans from afar, their strange efficiency, their quiet courage. They were not the monsters her people had feared, but she also knew what they were risking by helping her. If the Dominion caught them, they would all die. When Elias entered, she looked up, her eyes full of exhaustion and worry. There's something I must tell you, she said softly. He stopped, folding his arms. Go on, Vera took a deep breath, her voice shaking. That crystal in my pod. It isn't a weapon, it's proof. Proof that the Dominion never planned peace. It contains their invasion orders, Elias frowned. Why were you carrying it? It was given to me, she said. By a soldier who died protecting it, he told me to run, to find anyone who still believed in mercy. Her voice cracked as she continued, but no one answered. Not until you. Elias stayed silent for a moment, the weight of her words heavy in the air. If what she said was true, the crystal could save millions or start another war, he finally said. Then we can't let it fall into the wrong hands. The ship shuddered suddenly, alarms flashing red across the command deck. Rourke's voice came through the intercom. Captain, we've got incoming 3 Dominion interceptors. They found us, Elias turned to Vera. Stay here, lock the door. No matter what you hear. She grabbed his sleeve, her eyes wide with fear. You'll be killed. He gave a small smile. Humans don't die easy. The corridors filled with the echo of running boots and shouted orders. The Odyssey came alive like a beast preparing to fight. Elias climbed into the command chair. Barking orders, raise shields, charge the plasma cannons, and keep the crystal sealed. The stars outside flashed as the first wave of plasma fire hit their shields. Shaking the ship down in the medbay, Vera held her child tight, the walls trembling around her through the small window. She saw the black shapes of the Dominion ships circling like predators. Her mind filled with memories of fire and destruction, of screams and loss, but this time, she wasn't alone. Someone was fighting for her. In the chaos of battle, the Dominion hailed them, a cold mechanical voice cutting through the comms. Human vessel, surrender the Orenthal refugee and the stolen artifact or be destroyed. Elias smirked. Tell them they can have it if they can catch us. The Odyssey spun hard to starboard, diving through an asteroid belt. Laser fire slicing through the rocks, his crew shouted, holding onto their stations as sparks flew. Vera could hear the explosions through the metal walls. She looked down at her baby and whispered, Your life is worth more than mine. I'll not let them take you. Her eyes fell on a maintenance panel near the floor, half open from earlier repairs. She knew what she had to do moments later. Elias's communicator buzzed. Captain, we've got an unauthorized movement. She's heading to the cargo bay. Elias cursed under his breath and ran, the ship tilting as he moved through the corridors. He found Vera standing before the sealed pod, the crystal in her hands glowing bright blue. What are you doing? He shouted. She turned, her eyes wet with tears. If they track the signal, I'll take it far from here. They'll follow me instead of you. Elias stepped closer, shaking his head. You won't survive. She smiled weakly. My people already died. This is all I can give. A blast shook the ship again, throwing them both to the floor, the crystal rolling between them. Pulsing faster, Elias grabbed it, his voice hard. You don't get to decide who lives or dies, not today. He opened his wristcom. Rourke, open the secondary bay doors now. With the Dominion closing in, the Odyssey dove deeper into the asteroid field, chunks of rock scraping their hull. Elias ran back to the bridge, the crystal clutched tight in his hand. Set course for the nearest jump point, he ordered. What about the Dominion? Rourke asked. Elias's eyes narrowed. We'll give them something to chase, outside. A flare shot from the Odyssey's rear bay, carrying a decoy beacon with a matching signal to the crystal. The Dominion ships locked onto it immediately, breaking formation and speeding away. Inside, the humans and Vera watched as the enemy vanished into the distance. The silence that followed felt unreal. They had survived for now. Vera leaned against the wall, her child safe in her arms. Elias stood beside her, breathing hard. You risked everything for people who don't even know your name, she said softly. He looked out the viewport, the stars gliding by. That's what humans do, he replied quietly. We answer when no one else will. But deep inside the Odyssey, the crystal still glowed, faintly pulsing as if alive. The war wasn't over, it had just begun. The Odyssey floated in the shadow of a giant dead moon, its hull scorched, its engines barely humming. The battle had ended hours ago, but the scars of war still burned through the ship's corridors. Commander Elias Grant stood on the observation deck, staring at the distant stars. He had saved Vera and her child, protected the crystal, and defied every order he'd ever sworn to follow. The crew worked in silence, fixing shattered panels and sealing air leaks. No one spoke, but everyone knew what this meant. They were fugitives now, hunted not only by the Dominion but by their own command. Elias had broken the law of the fleet, but deep down he felt no regret. Farah entered the deck quietly, her child asleep in her arms. She looked fragile under the dim light, but there was strength in her eyes. "Your people will come for you," she said softly. "They'll punish you for helping me." Elias turned, his voice low and steady. "Maybe, but I'd rather face judgment than watch innocents die." She moved closer, looking through the window at the glowing horizon of the moon. "When I sent my signal," she whispered, "I thought the stars had forgotten me." He smiled faintly. "Sometimes mercy hides behind the hardest choices." Suddenly the alarm blared again, red lights flashing across the bridge. Rourke's voice came through the intercom. "Captain, we've got a fleet dropping out of hyperspace. Dominion warships. At least 6, Elias clenched his fists. "They found us again." He turned to Vera. "You and your child must get to the escape pod now." She shook her head. "No, I won't run while you fight for me." "Vera," he said firmly, "if this ship falls, that crystal must survive." The bridge filled with the thunder of weapons charging. The Odyssey's engines roared, pushing against the gravitational pull of the dead moon. Elias barked orders. "Power to shields, target their lead cruiser, and prepare countermeasures." The crew moved like one machine. Tired but determined, they were outnumbered. But they refused to back down. Outside, the blackness of space lit up with streaks of fire. Energy beams collided, tearing through asteroid fragments. The Odyssey danced between explosions, its metal skin glowing red from the heat. Inside, sparks flew from the ceiling, the smell of smoke filling the air. Vera ran to the medbay, placing her baby in a stasis cradle, whispering softly, "Sleep, little one, the stars will watch you." She then grabbed a discarded blaster from a fallen Marine and rushed toward the bridge. When she arrived, Elias turned in shock. "What are you doing here?" "Fighting," she said simply. "For the mercy you gave me." The ship shook violently as another blast hit their flank. Panels burst open and alarms screamed. Rourke shouted, "Shields at 30%. Elias gritted his teeth. "Divert power from the medbay, keep us flying." But before he could finish, the Dominion ships began to deploy boarding pods. They were coming aboard within minutes. The corridors echoed with the hiss of airlocks and the clash of metal boots. Elias drew his sidearm, leading his team through the smoke-filled hallways. Vera followed close, moving with surprising precision. They fought together, human and alien side by side. Every shot echoed through the hull like thunder. One Dominion soldier broke through the door, his armor black and gleaming. He raised his weapon toward Elias, but Vera leaped forward, knocking it aside. The blast hit her shoulder, sending her to the floor. Elias fired back, ending the threat, then knelt beside her, his voice breaking. "You're hurt," she smiled weakly. "Humans always worry too much." He helped her stand. Her blood shimmering faintly under the emergency lights, they reached the bridge again, just as another explosion rocked the ship. The crystal, still secured in the cargo bay, began to pulse brighter than ever. Rourke shouted, "Captain, that thing's reacting to the energy field. It's unstable." Elias turned to Vera. "If it detonates, it could wipe out everything within 1,000 kilometers." She closed her eyes, then said quietly, "There is one way to stop it." Her hand trembled as she reached for the communicator. "The crystal responds to my genetic code. I can deactivate it, but only from within its containment field." Elias stepped forward. "That field is lethal." She looked at him sadly. Mercy always has a price. Before he could stop her, she ran toward the cargo bay, her steps unsteady but determined. Elias followed, shouting her name inside. The glow of the crystal was blinding, filling the entire chamber with blue light. Vera placed her hand on the control panel, her body shaking from the radiation. Her voice was soft but clear. "Tell my child." The stars did answer. The light grew brighter, then suddenly faded to nothing. The alarms stopped. The ship fell silent. Elias stood in the doorway, watching the smoke drift away, where Vera had stood. Only the faint shimmer of light remained. The crystal was dark, deactivated. Her sacrifice complete, he sank to his knees, the weight of loss pressing down on him. For a long time he said nothing, only staring at the empty chamber. Then he whispered, "You begged the stars for mercy, and you became it." Outside, the Dominion ships retreated, their systems blinded by the energy pulse. The Odyssey floated quietly once more, battered but alive. The battle was over, but the cost was written in starlight. The Odyssey drifted through the quiet void, its hull scarred but still shining faintly under the pale glow of distant stars. Inside the ship, silence filled every corridor, broken only by the hum of engines slowly powering back to life. Commander Elias Grant stood in the medbay, staring at the small stasis cradle, where Vera's child slept peacefully, unaware of the price her mother had paid. He placed a gentle hand on the cradle's glass, his voice soft. "Your mother saved us all," he whispered. "And she saved something greater than any of us. She saved what it means to be human." His reflection looked older, wearier, but there was still fire in his eyes. The doors slid open and Lieutenant Rourke stepped in quietly. "Sir," he said, "Command has responded to our distress beacon. They're sending a retrieval team." Elias nodded slowly. "Then it's time we face them." Hours later, a massive human fleet arrived, gleaming ships surrounding the battered Odyssey like a silver wall. The message from Command was clear. Elias Grant was to stand trial for disobeying direct orders, harboring an alien, and protecting forbidden technology. He looked at the screen, his expression calm. "Tell them we'll come aboard willingly," he said. When the shuttle docked with the fleet's flagship, the crew of the Odyssey followed their captain in silence, heads held high. They were not criminals in their eyes. They were witnesses to mercy. Elias carried the stasis cradle himself, refusing to let anyone else touch it. Inside, the child slept. Her small fingers curled around her mother's old family coin, the same one Vera had placed beside her before sending her final plea. The tribunal chamber was vast, bright, and cold. Admirals and council representatives watched from elevated seats. Their expressions unreadable, Elias stood alone in the center of the room, the cradle resting beside him. One of the judges spoke, her tone sharp. "Commander Elias Grant, you disobeyed fleet command, aided an enemy alien, and risked human lives to protect her. How do you plead?" Elias looked up, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Guilty," he said. "Guilty of being human." Murmurs filled the hall. The judge frowned. "Explain yourself." Elias took a breath, his words carrying across the chamber. "I found an alien mother dying in space, holding her child, begging for mercy. No one answered her. Not the Dominion, not her own kind, not even the Council's satellites, but I did." He turned toward the admirals, his voice growing stronger. "She carried proof that the Dominion still plans to invade. She died saving us, saving all of you, and in her final breath, she showed more courage than any soldier I've ever known." He stepped closer to the council table. "If mercy is a crime, then call me guilty," he said. "Because mercy is what makes us human, and if we lose that, we become no different than the machines we fight." The chamber fell silent, the weight of his words hanging heavy in the air. A moment later, one of the admirals stood, his face pale but eyes bright with conviction. "Commander Grant speaks truth," he said. "We built fleets to defend humanity, but perhaps it's time we let humanity defend others." The others whispered among themselves, and finally the presiding judge spoke. "Commander Grant, you have broken the rules of command, but in doing so, you upheld the greater law of conscience." Her voice softened. "The council finds you not guilty." Elias exhaled slowly, the tension leaving his shoulders. He looked down at the cradle, the baby still sleeping peacefully, and whispered, "Your mother's mercy changed even them." Days later, the Odyssey returned to deep space under new orders, not as a warship, but as an ambassador of peace. The child, now safe under the protection of Earth's guardians, grew up among humans who treated her not as alien, but as hope. Every time Elias looked at the stars, he remembered Vera's voice, soft and pleading, echoing through the void. On the anniversary of her sacrifice, he stood alone on the observation deck, the stars stretching endlessly before him. He took the old family coin from his pocket and placed it against the glass, the starlight glinting on its worn surface. "She begged the stars for mercy," he whispered. But it was humanity that answered. The stars seemed to shimmer brighter, as if listening, and somewhere in that endless sky, where human and alien stories now intertwined, mercy still traveled between the stars, carried by the hearts of those brave enough to answer.